Charles, Netanyahu, the leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of Israel, the one who was getting ready to go on trial for corruption himself, was caught on a tape, on a recording, admitting that he and his party does not support a two-state solution in Palestine and Israel. In fact, what he said was a two-state solution was unacceptable, and they want to remove Hamas and remove all of those who are not in favor of Israel. Charles, that's the problem. You will never have peace in the Middle East if you got men like Netanyahu in power and leaders like Hamas in power, because the only peaceful solution in that region is a two-state solution. But Biden had to get him on the phone and talk to him and counsel him and scold him, because now the world knows this war that's taking place in Palestine has nothing to do with peace. It's about eradicating those who are not in favor of Israel, who live in that region, and taking that land back for Israel, because he does not support a two-state solution.
The war in Israel right now is not pretty. I love how you use Israel and then Hamas, because Hamas is absolutely Gaza. It's the government of Gaza. But the war that's occurring right now in Israel, it happened because a bunch of Gazans, right, some of them Hamas, went into Israel and killed a bunch of women and children, slaughtered a bunch of families, burnt their houses down, and did all this horrible stuff, right? And this is the first time in history where we've had one group start a war with another group, and then the world sits back and lectures that group on not providing them all types of services, right? Israel has offered a two-state solution to the Palestinian people at least a dozen times since prior to the formation, about 10 years prior to the formation of Israel, right? They are not interested. Now, I support a two-state solution. I've long been an advocate for it. But for you to sit here and suggest that the war that is going on right now is because Netanyahu wants to commit a genocide, right? Because prior to October 7th, people have also been accusing Israel of genocide when, of course, the population of Gaza has more than doubled. If you ever seen the wall, you ever seen the wall? You ever seen the wall? I let you ramble on. You ever seen the wall? Have you ever seen the wall between Egypt and Israel?
That occupation is
Have you
unacceptable.
ever seen the
based
wall
on the living
between
conditions
Egypt
of
and
those
Israel?
Palestinians?
How about Jordan? Have you ever seen the armaments between Jordan and Gaza? Right? Because that's the thing. The two-state solution is a perfect solution, but of course Israel's been offering it.
Netanyahu said he don't want one.
Well, Hamas.
So what he wants is continued war.
Hamas has been saying they want to kill all Jews.
Continued war.
They want to kill every single Jew.
So both governments need to go.
Both governments are not sufficient. Wait, now you're criticizing both governments.
Hamas leadership should go, as well as Netanyahu should go.
So do you think the terror campaign against Israel that's been going on for decades is a good thing?
No, I believe that all terror is wrong. But it reminds me of the terror campaign that America carried against the black people in America.
You only complain about it when it's directed elsewhere, and you love to complain about it when it's Jews, right?
No, you're wrong.
No, I'm not wrong. You've been anti-Semitic your whole career.
All terror is wrong.
Okay.
All terror is wrong. And you've been anti-black all yours.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Exactly.
Let's talk about that. This war is happening because of what happened on October 7th.
No, this war been happening since 1948. Charles, there's a story coming right out of Texas that the entire country is talking about. 2 African-American young 17-year-old boys were charged with capital murder for going into a store, a corner store and neighborhood store, and one was on video shoplifting a bag of chips. The store clerk sees them shoplifting the chips and confronts them outside the store. Words are exchanged. The 2 young men walk off, they leave the store. The clerk didn't call 911. He goes and gets his weapon, gets in his car, and then pursues them down the street, and he finds them. When he finds them, one of the young men said to me, the guy flashed his gun, the young men shot him and killed him. Charles, I don't believe that the store clerk should have gone this far over a bag of potato chips. His life is more sacred. Going home to his family is more sacred than a bag of potato chips. He should have just called 911 and let the police deal with it. I don't think young men should be shoplifting either. But now one has subsequently had the charges dropped. He's been released because he was not the shooter, but the shooter is still in jail right now. But I still believe that the store clerk went too far. I don't condone shoplifting, but I got a problem with a clerk believing that his life is worth a bag of potato chips.
You know, when you proposed this story, Quanell, I never believed you'd actually go on a television camera and say to the city of Houston that a poor cashier that was killed, I think at 11:30 in the damn morning, is to blame for his own murder. But that is, of course, what you just said. The story I've read, you talk about this now, the murderer said he had a gun. Everything I've seen suggests that he saw them shoplifting, that they refused to not leave, and that he merely followed them in his car, and then the murderer turned around and shot at him and killed him, right? That isn't brandishing
over
a gun.
bag of chips.
Well, you know what?
Over a bag of chips.
You can follow someone and call the police.
Charles,
there's no evidence
they don't
that he had
pay
a gun.
a store clerk enough money.
Any gun.
They don't pay a store
So
clerk
it's
enough
his fault
money to follow somebody for a bag of potato
for following
chips.
someone in his
And
car
they did find
for
a
being
weapon.
murdered.
There was a weapon in his car. Yes,
Then
it was.
Then why isn't it being
It has
reported?
not been reported. But yes, it was a weapon
okay.
in his car.
So this cashier.
They don't pay a cashier
because
enough money to put your life on the line for a bag of potato chips.
But he decided to follow two bad actors, two criminals. And
put his life on the line for a bag of potato
is
chips.
underwater from shoplifting. The police aren't responding to shoplifting, and we are putting thieves on a damn pedestal.
And so
now
you
you're
should
sitting
put
here
your life on the line
on this
for a
TV,
bag of potato
and
chips.
you're blaming a murdered man.
Let the police
because he
do their
didn't
job.
want bad guys get away.
Let the police do their
But
job.
the police aren't doing their job when it comes to
Well,
shoplifting.
hell, you don't give up your life over a bag of
here's
potato
the thing.
chips.
The truth is, you are just assuming facts that aren't in evidence.
No.
Suggesting.
I turned both young men in. I turned both young men in. And I know what was said to me. And one of the charges was dropped against the young man.
According to Quanell X, murders don't lie.
No, according to Quanell
and
X,
the truth
your
is,
life is more valuable than a bag of potato
okay,
chips.
And you're blaming a victim for his own murder. And the truth is,
he should not have been killed.
What race were the
His
two
life is sacred.
What race
but
were
I
the,
disagree with a man putting his life on the line for a bag of potato chips.
What race were the two murderers?
They were African American.
And what race was the victim?
You hate Negroes. That's your problem.
Okay, no, see, that's the whole
You
thing.
hate black folk.
That's the whole thing,
You hate black
Quanell,
folk.
and that's
I
why
didn't
you're
bring
on
up
this
race.
TV.
He brought up race.
Because we always know the answer with you.
We know the truth about you. Charles, there's an unbelievable story coming out of California where a woman, white woman, in a marijuana drug-induced fit, not using fentanyl, not using methamphetamines, not using psychedelic drugs, not using synthetic weed, just weed. And she had a marijuana-induced fit, stabbed her boyfriend 100 times, killed him. And the judge in the case gave this young white woman 2 years probation. That is an absolute disgrace. And the message he sent to everybody in California, if you're white, you got the complexion for the protection. Because had that been a black woman, and this white woman named Brian Special, or Brian Speckler or something like that, had her name been Bernicia Special or Bernicia Speckler, she would have been on the way to the penitentiary. Only way to say in Quentin. The only reason she got probation, because she has a complexion for the protection, and that judge could see his own daughter, his own family members, and that young girl. But black women and black folk in California have had weed problems for generations, but we ain't never had no favor like that.
Why are you assuming the judge is a white person? This is
Gotta be white.
This is Ventura, California.
Gotta be white.
California is the most far left state in this union. See, you talk about a crazy.
But that's Ventura, California.
I'm absolutely not shocked at all. Right? Like, it's another crazy California reality because California has lost their damn mind. But if you look at this, so Brent Specker murdered a man named Chad O'Melia, who everyone describes as this wonderful guy, a roommate, a good friend, a kind person. And the claim, and it sounded like some brilliant defense lawyering to me, I don't know how they made it, was that this hearing impaired audiologist, Miss Specker, the whitest spelling and sounding name, it's like B-R-Y-N space S-P-E-C-J-C-H-E-R. It's insane. It is, I'll agree with you, incredibly white name. And this is an incredibly, from a defense attorney's perspective, an incredibly white argument, right? That she had smoked weed and lost her mind. But there are some important things to point out. She was only convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Now, that was probably a plea bargain agreement and then pled open to the judge. But she stabbed a man 100 times to death. That does not sound like involuntary manslaughter to me. That sounds like murder. And the underlying argument, the legal argument, is that because she had lost her mind, because of the voluntary introduction of cannabis. And I know you don't, but I've smoked more than my fair share of weed and drank more than my fair share of THC legal beverages here in Texas and the pens and all of that. And I don't know anyone.
Did you just admit to drink and to get high before you come to the show?
No, not before I get to the show, but I do. And I go. There are several breweries here in town.
Man, I knew you was a dope head.
Okay, but anyhow, I have never met anyone that has used any form of marijuana and it made them psychotic. In fact, from my experience as a policeman, right, that drunks, people drinking alcohol, well, they're prone to beating their wives and wrecking their car and killing a family of 4 and doing all kind of horrible, crazy stuff, right? But people that smoke marijuana, when you interact with them as a police officer, they're playing their music too loud, you bang on the door, they open the door with the bong in your hand, and you say, what are you doing? Now, I didn't arrest people for weed, so I just tell them to turn the damn music down, but they're never causing a problem, right? They're never wanting to fight. There's none of that. So the suggestion that weed made her stab this guy 100 times, it stinks to me.
I totally agree.
Sounds like
but my bigger problem
nonsense.
is, had her name been Branisha
That's not the bigger problem.
Jackson, I guarantee you she'd be on the way to San Quentin or Pelican Bay. She sure as hell wouldn't be on the way home for probation.
I am not
This
saying,
is strictly because this was a young white woman who the court and the prosecutors had some sympathy on. This is a disgrace, man.
If this was a story out of Nebraska, I'd say you're probably right. If it was a story out of far left-leaning, very diverse California, I think it needs more investigation. But that's not the biggest concern. The biggest concern, and Portland tried to do this as a municipality years ago when they decriminalized most drugs, was creating a defense to prosecution that suggests, oh, if you're high, then you're not guilty, right? Oh, you did meth before you shot up the school? Well, you were high on meth. You're not guilty. Well, that's involuntary manslaughter. I am for ending the drug war. I'm for legalizing drugs with the exception of like crystallized methamphetamine and fentanyl, but a lot of drugs. But if you commit a crime while you're high on drugs, it should be absolutely no defense to prosecution.
I'm not for legalizing drugs.
It's absolutely, hold on. It's absolutely like telling a drunk person, oh, you just passed out the wheel and killed a family. Oh, well, you were drunk, so you're not guilty.
Charles,
that's the same math, and it's insane.
Legalizing
her
marijuana
ass needs to be in prison
for
murder.
I agree, but legalizing
not
marijuana is not as dangerous as alcohol. But it concerns me because I have witnessed marijuana make intelligent, well-educated men sound like jackasses, Charles. I knew something was wrong with you. I knew you wasn't right. For you to finally admit that you take them gummies and drink that weed concoction before you come here, it proves that a highly educated man, an intelligent man, can sound like a jackass on television because you high.
Once or twice a week.
We need an intervention. We must have an intervention.
I know that,
Charles,
you love to lie.
I want you to give it up, Charles.
I know lying is your thing.
You got to stop, Charles.
Right.
Like your white folks said, just say no. Okay. Nancy Reagan said, just say no. I say to you, just say no. Charles, let's clean up, Charles. Let's have a therapeutic session. Let's get together with other people like you in the group who are all dope heads, and we're going to work together, and we're going to clean this up so we can have a better show.
If America all decided, hey, I'm going to drink one can, I'll give a shout out to Klaus Brewing out there in Jersey Village and their grass water, which is so very wonderful. Eighth Wonder Brewery also does a great drink for Bun B Trillionaire, THC. But let me tell you something. If everyone, maybe once a week, end of the week, decided to get a little high, maybe everyone wouldn't be so crazy and violent. And if America switched to marijuana-based products away from alcohol-based products, we wouldn't see all of the cirrhosis, all of the cancers, all of the problems. I could go on and on about why weed should be legalized, but that's not the point here.
You won't see cirrhosis if you don't drink alcohol.
That's not the point.
Get rid of alcohol.
Here. The point.
But do you want to sound like this man? Do you really want to sound like this?
A very rich,
because if
wealthy,
you take that
intelligent man.
If you take that same hippie grass, if you take that same out in galactic drink he be drinking on, you're going to sound like this. Do you really want your children to sound like this?
The real concern is that if people commit crimes while they're high on drugs, it should never be a defense to prosecution. It never should be an excuse. It should never lessen their burden. And this woman stabbed a man 100 times to death.
Well, if you go to jail, just make sure it's in California so you can get off.
She should be rotting in prison.
Charles, I watched Donald Trump give his acceptance and his speech where he won New Hampshire. And in his acceptance of winning the nomination in New Hampshire, he had Mr. Tim Scott behind him. And he said something about Nikki Haley that was shocking to me in regards to Senator Tim Scott. He said to Tim Scott, "You must hate Nikki Haley. You endorsed me from being from South Carolina." And Tim Scott, being like Chicken George from Roots, being like Fiddler from Roots, being like Stephen from Django, being like Uncle Ruckus from the Boondocks, Tim Scott, with all his teeth, said, "No, I don't hate her. I just love you." Where do you white folks find these boot-licking, handkerchief-head, behind-kissing, scratch where they don't itch Negroes from? He had to be the most bona fide sellout window dressing Negro I've seen in my lifetime. He can make his own segment, how to be a buck dancing sellout black man. This man said that, "I just love you," a disgrace to his own people.
Well, we have tryouts, Quanell. At the white folk meetings, we bring people in to try out to see who can suck up to us most. Because, of course, all white people are evil, and all white people are in bed together, aligned to try to oppress people. I mean, that's the narrative of the day. I think that interaction really exemplifies what's wrong with American politics at this moment in time. For Trump to presume that political support against one person requires hatred to be directed at the other one, that absolutely defines what's going on in America, where you can't just reasonably disagree, right? I know for the cameras, you love to say ugly things like call me a member of the Klan or a stoner or whatever it is, whatever the insult du jour is, but off camera, we get along perfectly fine, and we recognize that this is just the work we do here to serve our narcissism.
We do get along.
But hold on. So
Jesus, he makes it mandatory that we get along.
Okay, let's.
I love all y'all.
Okay, all y'all.
I love all y'all.
Okay, when you say all y'all, you're reducing people to their immutable characteristics, and
love all y'all.
That's called bigotry. I know you could take a lesson on that, but you've made a good living being a bigot. So let's move back. Let's move back to Donald and Tim Scott's interaction after his victory in New Hampshire. You don't have to hate someone to support someone else. You don't have to hate an ideology to have a different ideology. And, now Nikki Haley, she made some fiery comments in the wake of her very narrow loss as compared to Iowa. But we also saw some truth that there's an open primary and that you had more non-Republicans voting in that primary than actual Republicans, which is an unusual number. It's an unusual metric. When you combine that with the fact that the Democrats are refusing to hold primaries and just anointing Biden, despite very real, and although there was a primary in New Hampshire, you had an overwhelming majority of people that were not Republicans.
She won the moderate votes like 5-1.
Right. In fact, in very left-leaning towns, you saw outsized participation in the Republican primary where you haven't seen that before, which suggests that people with no intention of voting for her in the general election participated in this primary to try to help her along. But
will those same people in the general election turn around and vote for Biden?
Oh, of course they will. In fact,
I don't think so.
In fact,
I think many of the moderates and independent votes that she received, the overwhelming majority of those votes will not go to Joe Biden in the general election.
Well, I think the math...
And I'm going to tell you why I think. Because I don't think that Joe Biden will agree to a debate. Do you think that Joe Biden will agree to a debate? Because of that, and in his record, I think it's going to tremendously hurt him in his attempts to get reelected.
Well, I think there's going to be an effort by the powers that be, the banking industry and everyone else, to prop up the economy, just like they did before his last election, right? Prop up the economy, fix things, and then or before the midterm elections, right? If you'll remember, the rhetoric from the Fed shifted dynamically.
It did.
Right. And this interest rate debacle that's crushing so many. Everyone's talking about, the Dow has reached unprecedented limits in the last couple of days. But interest rates and inflation are killing working class and middle class people. It's only the super rich that are still benefiting from this. And I do agree.
But I think it's time for Donald Trump to stop running against Nikki Haley.
Well, Donald Trump...
I think it's time that Donald Trump stop even talking about Nikki Haley. Because Nikki Haley benefits from talking about Donald Trump. But Donald Trump benefits nothing by talking about Nikki Haley. He needs to focus on Joe Biden and running against Joe Biden. The people of this country know that it's going to be a rematch between Biden and Trump. Nikki Haley does not have a snowflake chance in hell of getting that nomination.
Well, she does if the Democrats are successful in their effort about removing Donald Trump from the
And you know
ballot.
the Supreme Court's not going to allow that.
Well, and we'll see. But, or if they're successful in incarcerating him. But Donald Trump, yes, he should stop talking about Nikki Haley. And when he talks about her, he shouldn't talk about her in the terms of ugliness that he has used lately, or that he attacked DeSantis.
But what I don't like about Nikki, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hold on, he talks about all his opponents. But that's the thing. Donald Trump would still be the president if when he got elected president, he put his Twitter fingers down and just led, because he did some pretty good things during his presidency, despite it being dogged by the false Russian collusion investigation and all that kind of stuff. He did some bad stuff too, and he ran a bunch of taxpayer dollars through his business and foreign oligarch money through his business, and there's plenty to criticize. But he clearly, the economy, especially if you remove the pandemic portion, if you look at America during the first 3 years of his presidency and compare it during the first 3 years of the Biden presidency, there's no comparison, right? Biden has driven this country off of a cliff. But he can't stop being him. And the truth is, Trump's a horrible person. I think Biden's a horrible person.
And I think that Trump will take America to hell on a rocket ship.
Right.
The same way the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan predicted he would. But what I don't like is the double standard by Nikki Haley. Why is it Nikki Haley can question the age of Biden? She can question the age of Donald Trump, but it's sexist if a man questions her age.
Well,
for her to say that Donald Trump or Biden may not be fit because of their age, well, guess what? Nikki Haley ain't no spring chicken either,
yes,
baby.
She is.
She ain't no spring chicken.
No, she's
How
in
old
her
is she?
50s.
Early
to mid-50s.
Excuse me. When you're in your 50s, you're no longer a spring chicken,
okay.
brother.
Hold
Quit
on.
that.
Compared
so
to
a woman can call a man old, but a man can't call a woman old.
Did you see the clip of Trump talking about Pelosi but calling her Nikki Haley? He had somehow gotten confused and believed Nikki Haley was responsible for the Capitol Police
the way
response.
Joe Biden does,
right?
exactly.
No,
both of them.
They're both unfit to be president. I think those are germane, and it's interesting that you say that you can't criticize Nikki because of her gender. For a long time in American politics, in the last 20 years, you've been reticent, right, to criticize anyone other than white men because of fear of being labeled some sort of ism or some sort of racist or bigot or sexist or whatever. And in politics, we should have very robust discussions. But I will tell you, we saw the D.C. Circuit Court just this week upheld its gag order on Donald Trump that was issued by the trial court judge, as an African-American district court judge in Washington, D.C., that clearly hates Donald Trump. Very thinly veiled statements that blame him for January 6th. And I think it's legitimate to hate him. I mean, I think you can hate whoever you want, but you shouldn't be deciding someone's freedom if you've openly.
And that's why once that man's decision is appealed, it'll be overturned.
But here's the big thing. So they appealed the gag order, and now the D.C. Circuit Court refused to rehear it, and they refused a rehearing en banc. So when and if it goes to the Supreme Court,
and they'll take it to the next level.
But here's what he's restricted from doing. He's restricted from criticizing Jack Smith. That's the prosecutor's prosecutor, the federal special counsel, whose appointment was kind of weird, and all of his staff and attorneys and whatever. But he's also prevented from criticizing any potential witnesses. Well, Joe Biden could be a potential witness. So how hamstrung is Donald Trump going to be in his political rhetoric? And it gets worse. So if he violates the gag order, well, that judge could put him in jail, and he could possibly be in a federal detention facility during the candidacy. It's all insane. It's Banana Republic stuff.
But that's why it's important that the Supreme Court rule immediately.
Well, they're not.
Because see,
this what it
looks like. That's what feeds the conspiracy thinkers in America. That you're going to say prosecutors, when somebody is charged and indicted, prosecutors can criticize the defendant all day, every day. Nobody's ever put a gag order on them. But the minute a defendant says that I want to defend myself and challenge the credibility and character of the prosecutor, put a gag order on him. If I want to challenge the credibility of witnesses against me, put a gag order on him.
With a candidate for national office. But here's the real math.
You gonna put a gag on the man? That's unheard of.
I agree.
Man running for president.
Well, and Biden also said 2 years ago into a microphone he's gonna make sure that Trump's not given the opportunity to run again, and that is Banana Republic.
And that feeds the conspiracy things about this nation.
Right. So here's the thing. Here's the reality for the American voter right now at this moment in 2024. That we have two awful people running for president, and they're going to be the main party candidates. And we each are forced with the task of you can either opt to vote third party, trying to create a zeitgeist for the emergence of a new party in this country, which is basically a wasted vote. But I mean, that's what I would do, or I plan to do, if these are the two candidates. But if you want to participate and vote for one of the two people that are going to win, that you're forced as America, of all races, all classes, all colors, all creeds, all everything, that you have to look at these two awful men, and you have to decide who harms your nation, your state, your community, and most importantly, you and your family the least. Because they're both going to do a horrible job running this country.
Biden's going to lose, Charles.
Okay.
You know why he's going to lose?
I know.
Remember, I said it right here on Faceoff first. The same way I predicted that Biden would bomb overseas to protect his presidency, he's going to take us to war. He's showing all the examples, the signs of what I said before he did it. This is what Biden is going to do. This is what's going to happen. Because he can't stop this. Biden can't stop this. If Trump and the Republicans are smart, they're going to secretly finance a third-party candidate to run. And that third-party candidate can only be maybe a moderate Republican, conservative Democrat. A moderate Republican or a conservative Democrat only takes votes away from Joe Biden, not Donald Trump. When they put a third-party candidate into the place to run, it will secure Donald Trump the White House. Because that person will only, he or she, only pull votes away from Joe Biden.
You don't think
it's going
Robert
to happen.
Kennedy is
it's
going to pull moderate Republican-leaning voters?
Robert Kennedy will not pull votes away from Donald Trump, but he will pull them from Joe Biden.
Well, we'll see. We shall see.